decisions are made from bottom to top by democratic committees of workers and communities to decide what work needs to be done and how to do it. We won't get that immediately, but we are going to continuously fight for it, because once you have such democratic committees, it makes the program much easier to defend as well. Finally, what do we mean by jobs for all? If we look at the fight that we're talking about, it is not going to be an easy fight. We're not going to be able to walk up to the rulers and say, we'd like to take $1.5 trillion of your money and put it to what we want. To win such a battle, we're going to need the sort of unity that developed, as Jeanette talked about back in the 30s, everyone fighting together. And that means we have to be able to say that these jobs are available for everyone. Because people in the African American community will say, hey, that's a government job, that's not for me. I have a record because of the racist justice system. A disproportionate number of people in the African American community have convictions. Or in the immigrant community, people will say, that job's not for me, I'm undocumented. In order to form unity, we must say, jobs for all who live here. Everyone who lives here has the right to work at these jobs. So that's why we say, link this demand to legalization for all. Legalization for all, no matter where you were born, no matter what your record is. And it's for all also because it benefits all. We want to try and unify all the movements that are fighting in this country. If you're concerned about unemployment, obviously you should support a public works, a massive public works program. If you're in a labor union and you're concerned about wages being driven down, then you should support this program, because a public works movement would put a floor under all wages. If you're concerned about the environment, if you're fighting for better education, if you're fighting for better housing, then again, you should support this program, because the public works program will fulfill those demands. So what we're talking about is unifying all those movements and putting them into one fight that has the power to win. The last argument that people raise against this is that it's not realistic, that it's not practical. And a lot of speakers are going to speak about this. But one of the reasons why people see that this is not practical is because they limit themselves to what the Democrats can accept. Because it's sort of this unwritten rule that we can't do anything except what the Democrats can accept. Now, obviously, when we look at what's practical, the last few months, the last month has been an object lesson. Because people could have said to the Egyptians, it isn't practical to try and overthrow this dictator. And in fact, even after the Tunisian Revolution, when the organizers, the student organizers of the initial protests, went out into the Egyptian streets, they said, we better start with limited demands. We're going to start shouting in the streets. They went into a working class district and they started shouting in the streets, we have to raise the minimum wage, raise the minimum wage. And they viewed this just as a trial run. And hundreds and thousands of people started pouring out of the buildings and onto the streets, and they all were chanting, down with Mubarak. So what was practical was obviously underestimated even by those who were boldest. One of the proposals we're making to this conference is to have a conference in May about running independent candidates. And one of the reasons we think it's important is that breaking with the Democrats at the ballot box gets us out of the box of thinking the only things that are practical that are things the Democrats would accept. We know that these demands will ultimately be run in the streets, in the workplaces. But if we break with the Democrats at the ballot box, we start becoming the sort of independent, organized force which is most scary to the rulers. And it's only when the rulers are scared that they will lose power that concessions on the scale of a public works program can take place. If we can make them afraid, then the concessions will follow. And that's, again, what was shown in Egypt when, in the course of this last week, all of a sudden, wages were raised 15%, cutbacks were reversed, and so on. The thing to remember, and when we have a small meeting like this, sometimes it's hard to remember, is that it is not we who are few. It is actually the rulers who are few. We are many. We just have to get ourselves organized. And some people have heard me quote this before, but when I looked at the images from Egypt, I couldn't help but think of the famous quote that Shelley wrote, the poet Shelley wrote 200 years ago about the English working class, when he said, "Rise like lions after slumber. Shake your chains to earth like dew, which in sleep has fallen on you. Ye are many, they are few." Or, as we put it less eloquently but shorter last May Day, united we stand, divided we fall, rebuild the world, jobs for all. Thank you.
Comrades.